Well, good morning and happy Wednesday. My name is Kimberly Bishop. I'm Associate State Director at AARP Michigan, and I'd like to welcome you to Learn a Latte this morning, where we're going to be talking about something special, sleep. As we get older, the quality of sleep that we get decreases. In our 50s, our ability to produce melatonin, a powerful sleep hormone, may begin to slow. And our circadian clock, which is the internal meter that tells us when to go to bed and when to get up, often shifts earlier when we age, sending us to bed early in the evening and awakening us in the early hours, whether we want to get up at that time or not. But today we have someone who specializes in issues with sleep who will tell us how to get a good night's sleep and also address some things that may be preventing us from getting a good night's sleep. Prior to the Q&A, Kurt will give us a presentation, but at any point, if you have comments or questions, please type them in the comments section and we'll do our best to answer them once Kurt has finished his presentation. So this morning, I'd like to welcome Kurt Brown. Kurt graduated from Central Michigan University with a degree in exercise science. After graduation, he worked in Petoskey for 2 years as an exercise physiologist in a cardiology practice. In 2010, he moved back to Holland and studied at Mercy Health as a polysomnographic, that's a mouthful, Kurt, technologist or a sleep tech. He's been with Mercy Health Sleep Center for the past 10 plus years, working closely with patients and doctors on diagnosing sleep disorders. One of his favorite parts of his job is working with patients one-on-one to help them sleep better and make sleep a priority for better health. So thank you so much for being with us today, Kurt.
Thank you for having me.
As someone who has been diagnosed with sleep apnea, I realized this sleep is an important issue. So I'd like to welcome you and you can start your presentation.
Great, thank you. So yes, my name is Kurt. I am a sleep tech here at Mercy Health for the past 10 plus years. For the first 5, I was working at night, actually doing sleep studies in the lab, working with patients on different sleep disorders, sleep apnea, which we'll touch base on a little bit later. And then for the past 5 years now, have been working with patients directly on how to improve their sleep, having their CPAP machines adjusted and make it a little bit more comfortable for them. In a lot of ways of just working with patients to help them get better health through sleep. So I enjoy it a lot. It's something that I never thought I'd be working in, but now that I have, it's a real passion of mine. So thank you. So we like to talk about the 3 pillars of health. With nutrition and exercise, we hear about that all the time. I'm sure when anybody goes to the doctor or sees a healthcare professional, they're going to ask about your nutrition. They're going to ask about your exercise. It's been studied for a long time, the different foods we should be eating and not eating, how much exercise we should be getting, and things like that. The thing that gets left out is sleep and how much you should get. Even when I was in school for exercise science, we talked a lot about exercise. We talked a lot about nutrition for healthy weight and optimal health, but it wasn't brought up a lot, sleep. And that is something that I actually learned more after I got out of school and started this job, and how important it is and how it affects our everyday life, our health. It's amazing the things that sleep will actually do for you that, a lot of people don't know or aren't aware of. And for you sports fans out there, you probably heard of Tom Brady, who just won his 7th Super Bowl. And he's older, he's still playing in the NFL, and he's able to do that because he takes such good care of himself. And as you can see from that slide there, he makes sleep a priority. He gets 9 hours of sleep because he knows, along with that nutrition and exercise, if he wants to continue playing at the level that he's playing at the age he's at, he's going to have to make sleep a priority as well as those 2 things. So we spend 1/3 of our life sleeping, but yet 2/3 of us now don't get what is the recommended amount of sleep, which is for us adults 7 to 9 hours. Everybody's a little bit different. Some of us can get away with getting 7 hours of sleep. Some of us need a little bit more. Myself, if I get 7 hours, I'm pretty good throughout the day without having to live on caffeine or having to take a nap during the day or anything else. But it's important to find out how much sleep you need to stay awake during the day without napping and things like that, and try to aim for that every single night. Most of the knowledge that we gained on sleep has happened in the last 50 years, which again is why nutrition and exercise is such a primary focus when it comes to health and not so much sleep. But the past 50 years, it's just been outstanding with the amount of information that's come out and the studies that have been done that shows what our brains are doing during sleep, what our body's doing during sleep. One of the favorite books I have is Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. And in that book, he talks a lot about the different studies that they've done on sleep. And there's still a lot that we don't know, but the amount of information that we got now is significant in terms of how it can affect your health. There are different sleep stages that we look at. All of them are important for our health, and we're going to look at those here in the next few slides. But sleep will affect us both physically and mentally. So if you're not getting good sleep, it's not just, the next day you're going to be a little tired or you might need to take a nap. There's a lot more to it than that. So the different sleep stages that we look at here, stage one, it's a transitional stage of sleep. So it's only 5 to 10 minutes of your sleep, but it's when you first start dozing off. Somebody might say, hey, you're starting to snore, you should go to bed. And you're like, oh, I wasn't sleeping. When in actuality, you were. It's just that you're not quite all the way to sleep yet. But that's where the muscles begin to relax. Your breathing and your heart rate slows down. And then you transition into stage 2 sleep, which is a restful sleep. It's where we as adults spend most of our time. About 50% of our sleep is in stage 2. And that is where the heart rate drops even more. Breathing slows even more. The brain waves will slow down even more. So your brain's not as active as it is during the day. Your body temperature drops, and you start getting ready for that deep sleep. So stage 3, or deep sleep, is the deepest stage of sleep we have. It's hard to wake somebody up from that stage of sleep. And during that time, the body's doing amazing things. It's repairing itself. It's regrowing bones. It's building muscles. It's giving the immune system a boost. And as we all know, with this past year and the pandemic and people getting sick, how important our immune system is. And we've looked a lot into that as well, and how proper sleep can help somebody, prevent from being sick, or if you are sick, come back from that a lot quicker. So somebody that gets a cold, for instance, and they're not getting proper sleep, that cold's going to last a lot longer than somebody that is getting good rest, or they're going to have a lot better chance of getting a cold than somebody that has a higher boost to their immune system because they're sleeping well every night. Sleep actually has been shown to prevent certain types of cancer. It's gone that far where they're looking into different cancers and how that can be affected by the amount of sleep we're getting or the quality of sleep that we get. We do need that deep sleep, that stage 3 sleep, to feel refreshed in the morning. However, we get less and less of that stage 3 as we get older. When we're younger, we're still growing. Those muscles are still growing, so we get a lot more deep sleep. It's where human growth hormones are released, so we don't need as much of that as we're older, so you don't see as much. But we still need that sleep to feel rested in the morning, to have that energy that we need the next morning. And it's also been associated with insightful thinking, creativity, memory, and things like that. So then we go into our last stage of sleep, REM sleep, which stands for rapid eye movement. And during that time, your body sends out a signal that will paralyze the muscles. However, the muscles of the eyes will still continue to move, which is why they call it rapid eye movement. And it's also where you do primarily most of your dreaming. So while you're dreaming, those eyes are darting back and forth, but the rest of your body can't act out the dreams, which is great. Nobody wants to be running, kicking, or doing anything like that in their sleep. There is a sleep disorder where somebody would do that. It's called REM behavior disorder, but it's pretty rare. But during that time, again, you're doing a lot of dreaming, and at that time, your brain waves are actually much more alert. They actually resemble a lot of what they look like when you're awake. Your brain is very alert during this time. You need this. Studies have shown that this is actually the part of sleep where short-term memory is getting processed into long-term memory. So our brains are taking certain memories and getting rid of the ones that we don't need and keeping the ones that we want to keep. So without good REM sleep, you're going to start noticing short-term memory problems. It has been linked to dementia and other things like that. In REM sleep, it's also where sleep apnea, which again we'll talk about a little bit later, but tends to be the worst. So sometimes patients won't get great REM sleep because of that, and in turn have effect on their memory down the road. So the World Health Organization has listed poor sleep as a global pandemic. In our developed nations, people are so ready to put in a lot of work and work from sun up to sundown. The whole mantra of "I'll sleep when I'm dead" actually is quite accurate, because if you're not getting good sleep, you're going to age a lot quicker. It's going to have an effect on your health. So again, as adults, we need 7 to 9 hours. It's important that everybody reach for that every night. I've had patients tell me, well, I can get 4 hours of sleep and I'm fine. I'm one of those people that only need 4 hours of sleep. And really, that's not the case. Everybody does need that 7 to 9 hours and really should be striving for that. And if you're not able to get that, there might be something else going on or associated with it that may be causing you not to be able to get that amount of sleep. But shorter sleep duration and things like obstructive sleep apnea that may be affecting the quality of sleep that you're getting has been linked to hypertension. In fact, it's one of the leading causes of high blood pressure. Weight gain. There is 2 hormones that are regulated with sleep. They're called the hunger hormones, leptin and ghrelin. And they've done studies. One of the studies I find fascinating is they took a group of I'm sorry. They took a group of individuals and put them in a hotel, and then allowed one group to get 8 hours of sleep a night, and the next group, they got them up after 4 hours of sleep. And then the next day would allow them access to the same amounts of food, the same types of food. The group that got 8 hours ate significantly less and made better food decisions, because rather than being tired and trying to get that quick energy from sweets and sugar and things like that, they got that restful sleep and were making better decisions. And those 2 hormones that were not being regulated properly obviously were. So they were, when their body was telling them that they were full, they were able to stop eating, versus the individuals were only getting 4 hours of sleep. Memory, dementia, again, going back to not having that deep sleep and REM sleep, bringing that short-term memory into long-term. Diabetes is another big thing. Your insulin levels aren't able to control the amount of sugar in your blood if you're not getting good sleep. So diabetes is a huge link to sleep apnea. Low testosterone levels, depression, anxiety, and it speeds up aging. So if you're not getting a proper amount of sleep, your cells aren't regenerating like they should be. So it's going to speed up the aging process. 3 things I should mention we look for in sleep is the quantity, the quality, and regularity. So again, how much sleep you're getting, that's 7 to 9 hours, making a regular bedtime, going to sleep and getting up at the same time, and then the quality of sleep that you're getting. So is your sleep restful? Are you waking up frequently throughout the night? Those are all things that we look at and try to analyze. So again, as we get older, we see less stage 3 and REM sleep. We wake up more frequently throughout the night, possibly to go to the bathroom. One thing to touch base on is there are many causes of frequent urination at night, but one of those things can be obstructive sleep apnea, which is the next thing there, the sleep disorders such as OSA. Obstructive sleep apnea is where the muscles of the airway relax during the night, just like the rest of the muscles of your body, but it closes off the airway either partially or completely, where you're not getting enough air in. That will cause you to have a drop in your oxygen saturations, and it will cause the brain to wake up to say, hey, something's going on, you need to open your airway. This happens very quick. Most of the time, you don't realize it's happening. I, in fact, have obstructive sleep apnea. I worked in sleep for 5 years before getting tested, but my wife did say I snored, and she would always push and roll me over to tell me, you're snoring on your back, roll over. So I did get tested, and I've been on a CPAP machine now for over 6 years. And since starting that, I've lost weight. I feel much better. I don't take naps in the afternoon. I can think much more clearly in the morning. I don't live off caffeine throughout the day anymore. So it's made a big difference for me in my sleep. If you think or someone thinks you might have sleep apnea, if you snore, if somebody tells you that you stop breathing during the night, if you wake up with morning headaches, or if you ever wake up gasping for air, or if you have that frequent nighttime urination, it may be worth having you get checked out by a sleep doctor and having them look into it and having a sleep study done. We can diagnose and treat obstructive sleep apnea relatively easily. And again, it makes a big difference in your health and how you sleep. There are different medications that we can take that will affect the type of sleep we get. Certain medications can actually cause apnea to happen. There are certain medications that can repress the type of sleep we're getting, such as antidepressants. I've been shown to lessen the amount of REM sleep that you get. So it's worth looking into that as well if you're on medications, how they may affect your sleep and when you should be taking them. Other health conditions, as we get older, it might not be easy to sleep in a position that we like to sleep in due to pain or other things like that. And that our bodies produce less melatonin, and the lack of exercise can also have an effect on the way we sleep. So there are a lot of things we can do to help with getting better sleep. One would be avoiding caffeine products before bed. A lot of our doctors will say, stop drinking caffeine after noon. Reason being is caffeine has an 8-hour half-life. So it takes 8 hours for that caffeine, or for half of that caffeine to get out of your system. So if you're drinking caffeine all the way up until it's time for bed, it's still going to be on board. A lot of patients will tell me when they come in, I'm not affected by caffeine. I can drink caffeine all the way up until it's bedtime and I sleep just fine. That might be true. You might fall asleep, but it's the type of sleep that you're getting and the quality of sleep that you're getting. When we actually look at that in the sleep lab, your sleep is much more fragmented. You're not getting into that deep sleep. So it's best to avoid caffeine before bed. The other one that's not listed here is alcohol, and alcohol is also REM suppressing. So you're going to see a lot less REM sleep, and it can make sleep apnea worse. So if you have sleep apnea, your sleep apnea can be worse when you're drinking before bed. So very important to monitor that. Avoid drinking too heavily before it's time to go to bed. Go to bed when you're tired. If you're staying up to watch your favorite show, our bodies do have a natural clock, our circadian rhythm. And that's your time where your body's telling you, okay, it's time to go to sleep. If you're staying awake, there is something to that, getting that second wind and not being able to fall asleep. So you're staying awake, watching your favorite show, and then all of a sudden, I'm not tired anymore, I'm wide awake. So record your show, watch it the next day, go to bed when you're tired, and try to keep a bedtime schedule with going to sleep and waking up at the same time. Make the bedroom a comfortable place. Having a relaxing routine before bed, such as a warm bath, music. I think I noticed somebody asking about an audiobook, and that's fine if you want to listen to an audiobook before bed or read, but put it on a timer. Same thing with TV. If you have a TV in the room, put it on a timer. You don't want that going throughout the entire night. We've had patients in the sleep lab where they'll tell you, I need the TV on. If I don't have the TV on, I'm going to be awake all night. One patient in particular told me that. And then here in the sleep lab, we have switches in the hallway where you can turn the TV off. So I just waited till they started to fall asleep, turn the TV off, and all of a sudden they're asleep the entire night. The next day they were, oh, your mattresses are so much better here. I slept so much better. And it didn't have anything to do with the mattress. It was more the fact that you don't have this bright light and this noise coming through. So it really does have an effect on your sleep. Put those things on timers. In the evening, avoid using your phone, computers, laptops. They give off something called blue light, which mimics natural daylight, which suppresses melatonin production or release. So if you're on your phone or you're watching TV, you're not going to be able to fall asleep as quickly or as easily. So avoid those things a couple hours before bed if you can. If you can't, they do make things like these. I have a pair here in my office. They're called blue light glasses. They block out and filter out blue light. You can try those, and that can actually help you fall asleep. I use them because staring at a computer all day can have an effect on headaches and things like that as well. You don't want to nap too close to bedtime. In fact, during the day, if you're going to nap, let's keep it to 30 minutes or less. In fact, a lot of studies have shown that 30-minute naps are good, but anything over 30 minutes is going to have an effect on your sleep that night, and it's going to throw everything off. So you want to avoid napping if you can. Don't watch the clock at night. If you have any light in your room, it's better just to turn the clock around, turn any lights off, close the curtains if lights come in from outside to your bedroom. A darker room is going to be better for you, and a quiet room is going to be better for your sleep. Exercise is wonderful for your sleep. If you can do it during the day, you're going to sleep much better at night. However, doing it right before bed, you're going to increase that core body temperature. And during the night, our body temperature drops. So if it's continuously fighting with something like a warm room or that exercise that you just got done doing, it's going to take longer for you to fall asleep. So in going to the sleeping environment, again, avoid the light coming into the room if you can. Any sort of light coming in the room is going to have an effect on your sleep, even if you don't think it is. Limit the amount of noise. So again, those that like to watch TV or have a radio on or anything like that, put it on a timer. A cooler room is better. So since our body temperature drops, if you have sleeping in a hot room or with a lot of blankets, it's going to be harder for you to fall asleep. They recommend a cooler room, maybe around 68 degrees or so. Everybody's a little bit different, but keep in mind a cooler room is going to be helpful when it comes to falling asleep and getting better quality of sleep. Get some sun during the day. It suppresses melatonin. It wakes you up. It keeps you alert. So if you have the ability, get away, get out into the sun and get a lot more of that. That's the reason why here in Michigan, when it's winter, we feel so tired all the time. It's because it's always dark outside. We don't get that sun. So it can be harder for you to get a good, relaxing sleep at night. So while you can get that sun when you can. And then again, warm bath, music. If you're the type of person that when you go to bed, right away your mind goes to all the different things that you're supposed to do or all the things that you have to do the next day. Some studies have shown that keeping a journal, writing those things down right before it's time for you to go to sleep, that can help you get them on paper, get it out of your head, and you're going to fall asleep a little bit quicker. So if you're the type of person that you notice, like, as soon as I start to fall asleep, I just have all these thoughts racing, keeping a journal, that might help with your ability to fall asleep a little bit quicker.
All right, Kurt, learned a lot, and we have several questions in the comments. And I know that you've already answered one. We had a question from Yvonne about whether it was okay to listen to an audiobook on a 30-minute timer before bed. So is the 30-minute timer the key to that?
Well, yeah, you want to keep the timer at 30 minutes is probably about right. You don't want to do it any longer than that. Again, it's just one of those things that if you have it going in the background, it is going to keep you awake. But reading and an audiobook, calming music, any of those things are recommended. But again, as long as they're on a timer.
Okay. We have a question from Sharon. She'd like to know if it's normal to forget most of your dreams.
It is. Yeah. So, the funny thing is before I got tested for sleep apnea, I really didn't remember my dreams at all. And again, it's probably because I wasn't getting a lot of REM sleep, maybe. After starting on treatment, I do remember my dreams a lot more. However, it seems to only be that first part of the morning and then they're gone. But yeah, it is normal for us to not remember our dreams all the time.
Okay. We have a question from Carol. She'd like to know, why do your legs jump as you're falling asleep?
So there's several things that can cause that. One being restless leg syndrome, which is where your legs are involuntary kicking during the night. That can be caused by an iron deficiency or some different things. So it's worth getting that checked out by a doctor. Another thing it could be is sleep apnea. We do see what's called onset sleep apnea. So when you first start falling asleep, your airway closes off. And then the body's response to that is kind of jolting awake or kicking awake. So there's several things that can cause restless legs during the night. But I would recommend having your doctor evaluate you or refer you to a sleep doctor to have that looked at.
Thank you. And just like to remind everyone viewing, if you have a question, please type it in the comments and we'll be happy to ask Kurt. We have a question from Anna. If you wake up in the middle of the night and cannot get back to sleep, what do you recommend to go back to sleep?
So that's a difficult one. If you are waking up during the night, again, it might be worth looking into to see why you exactly are. But one thing we don't recommend is getting up, playing on the computer, watching TV. That's just going to make it more difficult to get back to sleep. You can do that relaxing routine again. So maybe putting something on a timer, music, an audiobook or something like that. Avoid light, avoid going to the kitchen and getting a snack if you can. But if all those things don't work either, it's one of those things that we might have to look into further as to why you're waking up during the night. If you're napping during the day, it can affect your sleep at night. You might wake up at, if you nap during the day, you might wake up during the night and just not be able to fall back to sleep because you already had enough. So if you are napping, avoid doing that, and you'll find that you can probably sleep better throughout the night.
Okay.
One thing I did forget to mention, sleep aids is one of the big things that we get asked about a lot, such as Ambien, Sonata, things like that. And those are more of a short-term fix. Studies have shown that that is actually more of a sedation than an actual restful sleep. It kind of has the same effect as alcohol does on sleep. So while they might be okay for the short term if your doctor prescribes them, it's not something that we would recommend taking long term. Melatonin is different. It's a natural occurring hormone, so you can take that. They make supplements for that, and you can take that, and it might help you fall asleep. But the other sleep medications that are prescribed are, again, recommended for short term.
Okay. We have a question from Carol who says, this seems to be a female thing, and I'm going to disagree with that part. Falling asleep on the couch, watching TV, then going to bed and being wide awake. How can you stop this?
So that goes back to having a good sleep routine. I was the exact same way. I got home from work, I'd lay on the couch, and then there's a good chance I was going to fall asleep. But after you wake up, and especially if you're getting any sort of light, if you're being any sort of stimulation in the background or talking about it, you're going to be wide awake and alert again. So the best thing to do is, first of all, avoid sleeping on the couch or falling asleep on the couch. Know when that you're starting to feel tired, when your body's telling you you're tired, go to bed. Avoid staying up and, going back to the part in my presentation of having that second wind. Your body has a certain circadian rhythm, that internal clock that tells us when it's time to sleep, when it's time to wake up. And if you're messing around with that by napping or waking up at certain points and doing certain things, it's going to be harder for you to fall asleep. So the biggest thing I would do is recommend trying to avoid sleeping on the couch or going to bed when you're tired.
Okay. Have a question from Julie. She says, if obstructive sleep apnea is not an issue for poor sleep, what other treatments are available? She follows most sleep recommendations, but only gets 5 to 6 hours of sleep per night, on average, according to her Fitbit.
What's important to remember is that, Fitbit, Apple Watches and everything, they are very good tools for using those. They're not perfect by any means. There's a lot to look into there. What exactly your sleep routine is, what your sleep habits are, or your hygiene is. So it's hard to say directly from person to person what can be causing you only to get that 5 to 6 hours of sleep. But if sleep apnea has been ruled out already, then I would look into, again, if you're napping during the day, avoid doing that. If you're having a lot of caffeine throughout the day, avoid having any caffeine after noon. And if all those things aren't working for you, it's going to be beneficial for you to talk to your doctor or talk to a sleep professional and have a little bit more studies done and insight into that.
Okay. This might be a little bit outside your area, but Julie would like to know, what about the type of services that are offered through the Brain Life Center in Auburn Hills? She says they use some sort of sound therapy to readjust brain waves to supposedly sleep better.
I personally have never heard of that. So I don't know how sound therapy would work in adjusting the brainwaves. I kind of touch base on, as we start to fall asleep, our brainwaves do change from stage 1, 2, and 3. They get slower and slower as our brain's more and more inactive. And then changing again when you go into REM, it's much more active like it is we are during the day. But I'm not familiar with the sound waves and how they might change our brain waves and affect our sleep. So
Okay,
I'll
thank
have to
you.
look into that a little bit more.
We have a question from Marilyn. She'd like to know if there's a way to increase deep sleep.
Yeah. So again, keeping those bedtime routines in check and avoiding caffeine. So caffeine, again, I've had patients so many times tell me that they're not affected by caffeine. They're not affected by this, that, or the other thing. They're, the anomaly that they're different than everybody else. And it's not true. So you can fall asleep with caffeine, but you're not going to get into deep sleep, or you're not going to get as much deep sleep, I should say. So regardless, as we get older, we are going to see less and less deep sleep. When we have pediatric patients, they stay in deep sleep for a really good majority of the night, but they need more of that versus us as we're full grown adults. So to get as much as you can, just keeping a normal routine, so going to bed at the same time and waking up at the same time. Studies have shown that most of our deep sleep occurs at the beginning of the night, with most of our REM sleep happening at the end of the night. So if we get in a routine where we're going to bed at, say, 9 o'clock and we're waking up at 6 o'clock, most of that sleep's going to happen right there in the beginning for deep sleep and at the end for REM sleep. But let's say the next night after weeks of doing that, one night you go to bed at midnight, your body's going to take over right where it left off at midnight. So you're going to miss out on a lot of that deep sleep. Same thing if you go to bed at 9 o'clock and you're waking up much earlier, you're going to miss out on a lot of that REM sleep. So in order to get all the stages of sleep and the amounts that you need, the best thing you can do is to keep the same schedule. Go to bed at the same time, wake up at the same time.
Okay. We have a question from Sherry. She'd like to know what's a way to overcome snoring?
So if you snore, that is the muscles in the airway closing off. And then when you're breathing, those muscles vibrate, and that's what causes snoring. So to avoid that, if it's pretty bad, you're going to want to have it looked at by a sleep professional. It could be sleep apnea, and there's a lot of different varieties of sleep apnea, all the way from very mild to severe. But if it's pretty good snoring, you're going to want to have it looked at. There are some things that you can get online that would help with snoring. There's these bite guards that would help pull the bottom jaw forward that helps with snoring. However, those can be a little tricky. Some patients say that it hurts the jaw, or they end up taking it out during the night. There are nasal strips that can help open the sinuses and keep the airway open a little bit more, so you can try those as well. If none of that works, though, and the snoring is pretty bad, I would definitely recommend having a doctor have it looked at. And the great thing now is that we can do what's called home sleep studies. So rather than coming into a sleep lab like we have here, you can take a unit home with you. There's only a few aspects or a few components to it. You hook yourself up, sleep with it overnight, and then you bring it back the next day, and we can download it and take a look and see if it's snoring, or if it's snoring associated with sleep apnea and other things like that.
Okay, thank you. We have a question/comment from Mark. He says his grandmother always had one small drink at bedtime and lived healthy well into her 90s. So is it all alcohol that's bad at bedtime, or is it just that you need to use moderation?
So it's definitely more moderation. You want to avoid having one drink before bed. Probably is not going to affect the way you sleep. If you're having a lot of drinks before bed, then you're going to start noticing that you're not going to have your REM stage of sleep nearly as much. And again, it's going to affect your sleep apnea. So you're going to, if you do have sleep apnea, you're going to have a lot more of it when you're drinking. In fact, a lot of times you'll hear people say, I don't snore except for when I drink. Well, the reason being is because your sleep is so much worse, and your sleep apnea is so much worse after having a certain amount of drinks or a significant amount of drinks. But I would say no, having a drink before bed, it wouldn't be bad. It's just, again, the amount.
Okay. And Sharon wants to know if sleep apnea can be cured.
That's a good question. So there's a lot of aspects to sleep apnea. One being weight. So when I was at my heaviest, I definitely snored a lot more. And then since being treated, I have lost quite a bit of weight, actually. But I think I told my wife once, like, hey, maybe I'll get tested again. Maybe I don't need my CPAP anymore. And she's like, no, you still snore if you fall asleep without it. And there was a few times that I've slept without my CPAP machine now and woke up just feeling miserable. So I definitely still have it. So for me, it's not so much weight, it's the size of my airway and different things that affect me. But there are some people out there where the sleep apnea is mostly weight related. So if you lose weight, you can be retested, and there's a good chance you might not need CPAP anymore. The good thing is, though, if you do have sleep apnea, and getting treatment such as a CPAP machine can help you lose weight. So there is that. And then there are other treatments out there, such as an oral mandibular device, something that's made by dentists that would help pull the jaw forward and treat sleep apnea. And now there's an implantable device to help treat sleep apnea called Inspire that can stimulate the airway and open the airway that way. So we won't get as much into that as different treatment options. But and there is surgery as well. But surgery, the success rate for surgery for having it and then not needing CPAP anymore is pretty low. So the biggest thing, if you want to try to cure sleep apnea, would probably be weight related.
Okay, thank you. We have a couple more questions. So I'd like to invite people to type in their last questions as we plan to wrap up. Susan would like to know if you can watch your screen with blue shades before bed.
Blue shades. So I'm not sure if we're talking about the same thing, but they're, again, these blue light blocking glasses. Yeah, if you put these on or something like this before you go to bed, it does filter out a lot of blue light. It's not perfect. Our doctors, our sleep professionals are going to tell you that 2 hours before bed, it's going to be beneficial for you to put the phones down, to turn the TVs off. They would rather have you probably read or listen to music or something like that rather than have the electronics out. But it's going to be better to have the blue light glasses, yes, than just not to be using anything at all. I do know that a lot of phones now, such as iPhone, has something called night, I think it's night vision, where it actually dims out a lot of the blue light, kind of makes your screen look a little bit more orange. And that can help as well. And there's also something on phones where you can make it where it's not going to alert you during the night, or it's not going to, every time you get an email ding or anything like that. And that's recommended as well, because even though you might not realize it, when those things go off, it could wake you up a little bit and you might fall right back to sleep and not know that it had effect on your sleep at all. So yeah, it's definitely worth looking into those things when it comes to electronics.
Okay. We have a question from Karen. She wants to know, how can you sleep well when you're on medication that causes insomnia? And she also has sleep apnea and uses a CPAP.
And that's a difficult thing because obviously medications are needed. Very strong pain medications can cause certain types of apnea. And, again, there are medications that can cause insomnia and different things like that. It's best to talk to your doctor and see when the best time of day you can take those medications are, where it won't affect your sleep as much at night, and see if they can help you with that. If you're able to get off those medications sooner than later, to try and do that as well. But then really just bring it up to your doctor and let them know the problems that you're having with insomnia while on taking these medications and the sleep that you're not getting, and come up with a plan with them on either a different medication or when you can get off that medication or when to take it. Again, it's kind of tricky because we all know we need these medications, but how they affect your sleep can be pretty substantial when it comes to your health and just being able to feel good the next day. So, not without getting into all the different specific medications and everything else and how they affect your sleep, I would recommend bringing it up to your doctor, letting them know that it's causing certain situations and see what they can do to help.
Okay. We just have a couple more questions. This has been a really popular session. We have lots of questions. Mary Ellen would like to know, if you don't dream, does that mean you haven't had a good night's sleep?
So you probably, well, you are dreaming. At some point you have to dream. If you didn't have any dream sleep whatsoever, they've done studies actually where they took a group of people and they monitored their sleep. And then as soon as they would get into REM sleep, they would wake them up and then they'd make them do math problems just because they wanted to make sure that they were actually awake instead of going right back to sleep. And then they let them go back to sleep. And the same thing, every time they started going into REM sleep, they'd wake them up. And at a certain point, they started having mental breakdowns, psychotic thoughts, things like that. So you need REM sleep. Without REM sleep, you're going to have some health issues going on. If you don't, going back to the earlier question, there's a lot of times where you're just not going to remember your dreams. Or if you have a sleep disorder that's affecting your REM sleep, it might be very fragmented. So you're getting into REM sleep and then you're waking up and then you're getting back into REM sleep and waking up. So it might be very short REM periods that you're experiencing where you might not remember your dreams. Again, after I got treated, my dreams happened to be much more prominent. They lasted longer. I can remember my dreams when I first start waking up as before. So I would say if you don't ever remember your dreams, it's not that you're not dreaming. It just might be, the type of sleep that you're getting, or it might be you're having really short REM periods.
Okay. We have a question from Howard, and you talked about this a little bit, but how does alcohol actually affect sleep?
So alcohol, again, it's REM suppressing. So it's kind of like those sleep medications. It's a suppressant. So rather than your sleep being restful, for you falling asleep on your own and getting your own sleep, it's more of a sedation. So, a lot of times people will tell me that I drink before I go to bed because it helps me sleep. Oh yeah, it will help you go to sleep just like those sleep medications will, but this type of sleep that you're getting and the refreshing nature of that sleep is just not the same. And it is going to, again, go back to how much you're drinking. There has been some studies that certain amounts of alcohol can be health beneficial, but if you are drinking a lot more than that before bed, it's just not a restful, normal sleep that you're going to get. And then again, making sleep apnea worse is another thing that alcohol will do for you.
Well, Kurt, I'd like to echo the sentiments of a number of our viewers who have said this was great information. I'd like to thank you so much for being here with us today. And I'm wondering if you have one final thought that you'd like to share with everyone.
Yeah, just remember to be well, live well, make those things a priority, sleep, eating, nutrition, but then also being with family, being with loved ones. Those are the types of things that's going to make your life a lot more meaningful. So keep those things in mind and just be well.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you to our viewers for your wonderful questions. I'd like to remind you to visit our webpage, aarp.org/MI, so you can find out all the other interesting, fun, informative, and exciting events that we have. So thank you so much. And again, thank you, Kurt, for spending some time with us this morning.
Thank you.